Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. We will build ball and jumping games together. We will also create a watch as a bonus. I recommend you to watch the video without skipping to the end. At the end of the video you will start making your own JavaScript projects. I shared all the codes of the projects on GitHub account. You can subscribe to YouTube channel to watch more videos like this.
Do you know that you can make ball games using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS? In this video we will learn in detail how to make a simple ball game. We will use your clone Git repository option to import the project on GitHub into Visual Studio. I will share the address of the project with you in the video description. Paste the copied address into Visual Studio and press Enter. Create a folder for the project. Select the Select Repository Location option. Select Open to open the transferred project. Let's start by examining the HTML code file. You can specify a title using the keyword title. I synchronized the CSS script file with the HTML script file using the link keywords. I created game and character objects using the div keyword. As with the CSS sync operation, you can use the script keyword to synchronize the JavaScript script with the HTML script. In the CSS file, I first set the color of the HTML page. You can choose any other color you want in the background color feature. In the game class, I determined the physical properties of the playground. The physical characteristics of the game character were determined in the character object. We set the color of the object in the background color property. Using the radius feature, we converted the shape of the object to a round shape. We set the position setting to relative as the position of the object will change constantly. We have created a barrier for the game in the block class. We set the position setting to relative as the position of the block object will change constantly. In the project, each block object must have a hole. Hole object will be created as random in block object. We will do the random generation process in the JavaScript file. We synchronize the character and game classes with the variables in the JavaScript file using the getElement function. In the code file, we will use objects such as interval and counter in the function part. While examining the codes, I will explain in detail how these variables are used. In the move left and move right functions, the character object moves to the right or left when the movement keys are pressed from the keyboard. By using the key down object, when the user presses the movement keys, the object moves to the right or left by 2px. By using the key up object, the object was fixed when the player stopped pressing the button. Without this function, the character object would go all the way to the end of the playing field, even if you stop pressing the key. It has been ensured that the block object is constantly created in the blocks variable. Two variables were created and the block and hole classes were recreated using the counter variable. If counter is greater than 0, the location of the last block and hole object is determined using the getComputedStyle function. If the position of the last block object is less than 400px, or if the counter has just started counting, the game continues. If the game has just started, operations will be performed inside the query first, since the counter is equal to 0. We did not add block or hole classes in the HTML file. We will make the classes inside the if query. Because as the game continues, we want new block and hole objects to be created. We will use the counter variable in the setAttribute function to continuously create new objects. Note that the counter variable is incremented continuously at the end of the if query. In this way, we can create new objects. Increase the position of the last hole and block objects by 100px. But the hole object needs to be constantly created differently. We can use the random property to set different hole object positions. Continuously call the counter variable in the current blocks variable using the push function. This feature will keep the game running continuously. The top and left of the character object are synchronized with the variables. The variable drop has been created. We will learn how to use the drop variable in a moment. We need to keep the character object constantly above the current block object. First, we detected the positions of the block and hole objects and synchronized them to a variable. We can adjust the speed of the block and whole objects using this value. If the top of the block object is less than -20, delete the block object. We are constantly using if queries so that the character object is above the block object. Always increase the drop object by 1 if the game is still running. If it does not continue, synchronize the drop object with 0. If the drop object is equal to 0 and the top value of the character object is less than 480, continuously increase the character object, px. In this way, if it is not in the whole object, the character object will always stay on the block object. If the drop object is not equal to 0, decrease the top value of the character object. In this video, we learned in detail how to make a simple ball game. Do not forget to improve the game. You can improve the game by adding live scores. Did you know you can make a simple jumping game using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS? In this video we will learn together how to make a simple jumping game. We will use your clone Git repository option to import the project on GitHub into Visual Studio. I will share the address of the project with you in the video description. Paste the copied address into Visual Studio and press Enter. Create a folder for the project. Select the Select Repository Location option. Select Open to open the transferred project. The onClick property in the HTML script file and the function in the JavaScript file have been synchronized. In this way, when the HTML file is clicked, the jump function in the JavaScript file will run. We'll take a look at the jump function in a moment. A title was determined using the keywords title. The CSS file in the project was synchronized with the HTML file using the link keyword. Created the game class within the body keyword. Created character and block objects in the class. JavaScript file synchronized with HTML file using script keywords. The starting position of the game is set first in the CSS file. The playground represents the game class created in the HTML file. The color and dimensions of the playing field have been adjusted within the game class. The color and size of the character object created in the HTML file has been adjusted. The width of the character object is set to 20px. Mathematically, the sum of the ball and height values must equal the height of the playing field. Our goal is to make the character object jump when the HTML file is clicked. We will use the animate and jump classes for jumping. We set the animate object to 500 milliseconds. Adjusted the physical properties of the obstacle in the game in the block class. Its width and height are specified as 20px. Since the width of the playing field is 500px, its position has been set to 20px. By using the keyword keyframes, the block object has been reduced by 40px from its 480px position, so that its continuous position approaches the character object. The process was repeated continuously using the animation command. By using the keyword keyframes, the ball position of the jump object was increased from 150px to 100px, and the object was made to jump. The jump time was set to 500 milliseconds. Adjusted the top value of the character object to be 100px in 30% and 70% of 500 milliseconds. Thus, the character object was suspended in the air for a while. The game class and its objects were created in the HTML class. The character and block objects are synchronized with the variable in the JavaScript script file. Created jump function synchronized with onClick property in HTML script file. Added the animate attribute if it is not present in the character object. At the end of the specified time, the animate object was remote. The specified timeout period is 500 milliseconds. The contact control of the block object and the character object was done with the if query. The top and left positions of the character and block objects were calculated with the getComputedStyle function and synchronized with the variables. If the left position of the block object is less than 20px, and the ball position of the character object is greater than 130px, the two objects have come into contact. Therefore, the alert function was used and the game was reset. The control was performed every 10 milliseconds. In this video we learned how to make a simple jumping game. You can add some features to improve the game. For example, add a score object to the game. After each block, the score will increase by 10 points. When the player reaches 100 points, the game will speed up by 10%. I'm sure you can. Do you know that you can make a clock using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS programming languages? In this video we will learn how to make a real-time clock. We will use the Git feature to transfer the project from GitHub to Visual Studio. I will share the address of the project with you in the description of the video. Paste the copied address and press the Enter key. Create a file to start the copying process. Click the Select Repository Location button and start the transfer process. Select Open to open the copied project. Click on the Trust button at the last stage to open the project. The project has been successfully imported into Android Studio. The project contains HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. Let's start examining the HTML file. The keywords link and script were used to synchronize the CSS and JavaScript files with the HTML script file. The title of the project was specified with the keyword title. The clock class has been created in the body section and the objects that should be found on the clock have been added. For example, hour, minute, and second objects are determined in the class. Added number objects that should be on the clock. In the CSS section, the background color is set in the body section. Border and background color adjustments were made in the clock section. The radius command was used to make the clock object round. If you delete the radius command, you will see that the clock is formed as a square instead of a round one. The positions of the numbers on the clock object were adjusted using the rotate function. Angles of all number objects are given. A hand object has been created under clock for the hour, minute, and second indicators. In the transform section, the angles of the indicators were specified using the rotation keyword. A circle was formed in the middle of the indicators. Second, minute, and hour objects were created under the hand object. The color of the second object is set to red. The clock speed has been adjusted in the set interval command in the JavaScript file. The variables were created and synchronized with the hour, minute, and second objects in the HTML file. The setClock function was created for time calculations. The clock is synchronized with a variable. Variables were created for hour, minute, second objects, and calculations were made. The calculations made were displayed in a function that specifies the angles of the hour, minute, and second objects. Adjusted the angles of the objects using the rotation keyword. The setClock function has been called and the coding part is complete. Let's open the HTML file to see how the project works. The clock started working according to the time variables calculated in the JavaScript file. We learned how to make a real-time clock using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS programming languages.